Hi, I'm Gary Striegler. I've said this before, but I'm going to say it again. One of the things I absolutely love about being semi-retired is I get asked to do a lot of interesting projects. This porch swing is a great example of that. Someone asked me to build one, so I built one and I thought, I got to share that. Now, it's really a simple project. This one is actually just made out of what they call SPF that I bought at one of the big box stores. You could certainly do it if you wanted to spend more money. I've seen them made out of cedar, which would be absolutely wonderful and probably be more expensive, let me put it that way. I've even seen some made out of oak. I'm not sure why. The key is going to be, when you put some finish on it, you have to kind of figure out whether it's going to be exposed to a lot of weather or a little bit of weather. But anyway, the whole thing starts with, I've made a frame and it's pocket screwed together. I have these three pieces which form the contour of the seat. Now, before I forget, the dimensions outside to outside from right here to the other side, I made 47 inches. Now, the reason for that is so that I could cut a 48-inch piece of lumber and have it hanging out about a half an inch, which gives me the best use, out of my material, because almost any material you're going to buy is in some, some multiple of 4 feet. Anyway, I started out by making a pattern out of MDF, and I'm just going to share that I've made some marks here. Like on my pattern, when I came back 4 inches, I was up about 4 inches. When I came back 13, it starts down here, and I guess I ought to measure this real quick. It's one I forgot. Yeah, so it's a little about 3 1/8 here, and as it comes back 4 inches, it comes up to 4 inches. By the time I come back 13, it's 3 1/4, and at 19 is the point where it goes back and squares off. Anyway, there's nothing sacred about this. I have made it to where the depth of the seat's about 18 inches. So what I did next, and I'm not even going to demonstrate this, but I took this really big flush trim router bit. Of course, I had it laying down, and as the bearing rides against this pattern, it's going to flush trim it. This is a big one, but you could do it with the small one. The key is you want to make 3 of these that are exactly the same size, and then in the middle I had to cut 1.5 inches off the front and 1.5 inches off the back, because I wanted these pieces to go continuously. And again, it's all put together with pocket screws. I just use these 2.5-inch blue Craig screws. They also make kind of an XL version, which can be even bigger. But let me get this stuff back out of the way. Now, I would advise, if you're going to start a project like this, I just took a piece of plywood and laid the whole thing out. This angle is about 8 degrees, which this is my one middle support, but that's 8 degrees. And it's just a good idea to have a pattern to refer back to as you're putting it together. So at any rate, I pocket screwed that together, including the middle one. And I just went to the table saw and I started ripping a whole bunch of these slats that I chose just to make them, the 1.5 inches the material comes anyway. I ripped them to about 7/8, and then I ran them through a planer. You wouldn't even have to do that if you've got a really good clean cutting blade, like I run a Tenru combination blade on my table saw. You get a clean enough cut, and you may even want to look a bit rustic. You can sand it, but a planer is the fastest way to go. Then I started out, and I just started nailing these. Whoops, I guess I better back up. Actually, the first thing I did is I wanted to establish this line and this distance to the front, where these vertical pieces are, is about, from the back to there's about 16 inches. These do come up 15. And this is my armrest piece. It actually notches around this side and flushes right there. On the end, I just clip the corners on a miter saw. I went to the table saw and cut. If you can see, I've cut a little bit under on the bottom, but that doesn't really matter. And then we're going to take a kind of a B-roll shot of making this cut, because there's a little bit you need to know about how to make that cut. This is the arm piece for the porch swing, and this is the amount of wood that I need to get rid of so that this piece can go by the arm. So I cut this on the table saw, and it's undercut a bit on the bottom, but going down the side, I don't want to undercut too much because I don't have that much wood left here. So what I need to do, first of all, I push this sliding saw back that way as much as possible, because what we want to do is be where we're making the cut, instead of as this blade really rolls up there, I'd have to really cut under a lot there. We want to be cutting kind of right at the low point of that blade. So I'm just going to take a sacrificial piece of 1.5 inch stuff. You know, you could maybe even do something bigger. I've locked this in place. Now I'm just going to come over to my layout mark. But the key is, I've got a mark right here so that I know when it's right like that, it's where I want to be. Now, these pieces, these back supports and these front supports, I use some tight bond glue. You could use tight bond too, but something waterproof. And I put about 3 of these screws, which are about right at a 3-inch screw in, to support that. And the same thing back here. Now I do want to share, just so you'll have all the information you need. I chose to make this about 30 inches. And again, the bottom angle is 8 degrees, the top angle's 8 degrees. So after I glued these and screwed them on, I wanted to kind of get started, so you could start nailing those slats on almost at any time. But this piece goes like this. Now it's important to keep it flush out here, and the reason for that is, you know, some people use chains, some people use ropes, but whatever you're going to hang this porch swing with, you need a clean face here. Let me see if I can find my tip. There it is. Just going to swap out real quick. Now, I did use, and these are actually a screw that's meant for composition decking. It's got a little bit of a smaller hole, so that's what I chose to attach these with. And I didn't use any glue on this part. And I'm gonna make sure I'm keeping that flush. Oh, by the way, I did, you know, check with a square to make sure this is straight up and down. Okay, let's put a couple of these. I did use about a 3/8 round over to round all the way around to get a really nice soft edge, but I didn't do anything on the bottom. And I didn't put any glue in this joint right here. I certainly wouldn't argue with you if you felt like you wanted to. Now, by the way, I'm not a painter, but I would tell you, if you want to make it a little bit easier on yourself, you could get the whole frame put together and then put whatever kind of finish you're going to put on all these structural pieces before you start putting the slats on, because it's a lot easier to get that finish on before you got the slats in your way. Okay. The next thing, this piece, which it had to notch, this notch around it is to notch around the side there. And I'm going to need to add a little bit of glue, hopefully not make too big a mess. And I'm going to switch back to my little bit bigger screws. To go inside. So, but that's the reason I wanted to have, it's kind of like a game of hide and seek. That's the reason I wanted to have this piece in and maybe this one piece in before I added this, so I could just pop it right up there tight where it needs to go. And actually along the way, for all of this, I've just been using some 2-inch 18 gauge brads, which go through the 1.5 and give me just enough holding power until I can drive the screws in. Now, I'm just using galvanized brads. If you did make the choice to go with cedar, you would need to get stainless steel 18 gauge brads, which you can get those from Grex. Now I think what I want to do, I'm going to swap back and forth. Right now I can move that a little bit, so I'm going to take some measurements. If I can, there it is. So what I'm going to do is measure in between here. Yeah, so I needed to move that just a little bit, and I'll put just a tiny mark on the back, so that it's going, I'm going to double check myself. Sometimes I get in a hurry, but you know, a lot of this is just kind of making sure that you keep the same measurement as you go. I'm going to use this little deck screw again here. And I'm just trying to keep those almost flush. Okay, again, hope I can do this without making a mess. Of course, there's a knot right there at the board. Anyway, I'll just shoot a couple of these 2-inch 18 gauge brads into here. And what I did from there, on the seat, I used 1/2-inch spacer. I just put a plywood spacer on the side. And then after I got this first piece sticks out just a little bit, and I started using a spacer coming back. Now it's a good idea as you start getting towards the back. It's kind of like building a deck. At some point you want to go from spacing there to starting to measure at each end in case you need to make a little bit of an adjustment. But again, these pieces are going to go all the way back. Now, don't make the mistake, unfortunately, that I made a couple times of cutting all your material that size, which is 48, because you do need a few pieces that are a little bit longer, because these boards are outside the frame, so that it adds 3 inches to the length. And you know what I'm going to do on this backrest is I'm just going to space them 1.5 inches and keep coming down. And you know, really I'm just down to, oops, having said that, I'm talking away, and I do need to add that other screw, assuming I can find this, down here on the back for strength. I have got about one more thing I need to show. I think everything else is pretty self-explanatory. So the way that, you know, if you're going to use rope, you could use like an eye bolt or something to mount this. If you're going to use chain, what I do is take like this is about 3-inch by probably 3/8 lag bolt. If I run this through my chain and then come down here, I've got a total of 3 inches for this to go in, and this called a fender washer. What that means is kind of an oversized washer with a hole in the middle. will give some room for the chain to move, but not let the head of the screw come through the chain. So I had 3 inches back here, which is a pretty good bit to go in. You probably want to drill a pilot hole, by the way. Now, here on the front though, you could maybe run it in there, but I think it works better if you can get that chain a little bit further forward. So what I do, so I'm gonna put a little bit, this is just simply a block of wood that we cut a chamfer on so that it doesn't look too bad. I'm gonna put that right down there. And then run a couple of these screws in. Now, it would be wise to drill a pilot hole, because sure don't want to split this, but I'm going to see if I can get it. And once that glue dries, that's going to give me the ability to get that chain a little bit further forward. You definitely want to drill a pilot hole for that bolt when you go forward. By the way, a pilot hole, basically what you want to do is, if you could see about what that size is inside the threads. So this would be, an 1/8 or maybe a little bit bigger, an 1/8 inch drill bit would be plenty good, because if you drill too big a pilot hole, you're not getting any holding power out of the threads. And I think I learned that like in junior high shop class back in the day when they actually had shop class. Okay, so all I've got to do now is kind of finish putting these slats on, add some slats probably down to about here. Maybe the only dimension that I haven't told you, I bought 2x6 for all this, and you can get the dimensions for these seat frame pieces, off of that, or create your own. There's nothing sacred about it. But all this and these pieces are actually, I just split a 2x6 down the middle, so they're roughly 2 3/4. Again, how much sanding and everything you do is up to you, but this is a fun project, so I hope you'll maybe consider it. And the smart thing might even be to build one like me out of the less expensive material, and then when you really want to go all in, invest in cedar.